Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to be talking through how CodeFactory is used in architecture. We're going to do a small demo today where we're just going to build a web service for an application that tracks licensing. This is a demo application. This will be a multi-part series. So before I jump in, I'm going to very quickly walk through some of the different libraries that we have, and then we're just going to jump right into the action and actually go build some stuff. So in my data layer here, I've got a series of projects that track basically our database functionality and build repositories. In our logic layer, this is where I track all of our business logic, and when I call repositories, that happens here. In my logic layer, this is where I actually host my web API and a model library that I use to track any of the data that needs to be stored inside of the actual message body of a REST call. And then we get into client. This is the consumer of that REST call that I use with my web application itself. And then finally, I have this model layer at the app level that stores all of my entities that I use throughout the system. Okay. So later on, we'll go into more depth on some of these things. But today, I want to make sure you get a use of what CodeFactory is and get an idea of its real benefit. So the whole purpose of CodeFactory is to allow us to very quickly author code that we use in our systems that takes a lot of time to build. So defining interfaces, building bounds checking, exception handling, things like that. Anything that a dev team takes time to build. CodeFactory will allow us to automate that using software automation to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to generate a series of, we're going to generate a service from front to back for our customer object that we're going to use to build our customer screens in the system. So to do that, we're going to right-click directly on a repository table that's already been generated using scaffolding out of EF. So here I'm just going to right-click on this. I'm going to go down to CodeFactory Source Automation, and I'm going to go ahead and refresh this EF repository. So one thing you're going to know is that a bunch of files were instantly created. And if we go and look at Git changes, you'll see that we created a new app model. I created some validation for it. I created an interface for the repository. I created that repository. I then created some additional missing files I needed. And I built a way to transform my customer from my EF entity into my native app model on the fly. Okay, now that I've got that created, let's go take a quick look at the repository. So you'll notice our repository, it's fully built from top down. It's already up and running. And we're good to go. So now what I want to do is to be able to put this to some logic. So we're going to go to our logic layer. From here, I want to be able to generate what I need to call this repository. So to do that, I'm going to go to my customer repository. We're going to go to CodeFactory Source Automation. I'm going to update the logic implementation. One of the things you're going to notice, it's automatically built a contract I can use for dependency injection. It already put in my add, update, and delete. I also going ahead and created my customer logic. It already added my logging to it. So the only thing I need to do is subscribe to the repository and update my logic. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and create a private read-only. We're going to do this as an I customer repository. Okay. So then we're going to go ahead and add this to the constructor. And then we're going to do an I customer repository of type customer repository, and we'll go ahead and wire it up. Okay, basics are in there. Now all I'm going to do for my logic layer is say, hey, we're just going to call the repository for now. So to do that, we're going to notice, before I actually do this, notice it automatically did bounds checking for us, automatically create our result, does logging for us, puts a try catch block in for us, and actually handles a series of logging calls and what type of exceptions to throw. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to wire up our result. It is going to be equal to await. We're going to call our repository. There we go. We'll do the update now. Once again, result is equal to await. We'll go to our customer repository, and now we'll do our update. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and do our delete. Since we're not returning anything from this, we're just going to await this call. And once again, we're going to call the repository and we're going to delete. Wonderful. Now that we got that done, one of the things you're going to notice is this thing called a library loader. For now, I'm not going to explain what it does, but we'll come back to that another time. Next thing we'll do is I just need to tell it to update my registration. So now when you look in here, you'll notice that when we go to down here, you notice that I actually registered the service collection for that customer logic on the fly. Now the final thing I want to do is I want to be able to generate this as a web service. So to do that, I'm going to go down to my logic for my customers, and now I want to generate a REST service that takes advantage of all this. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh a REST service. And now you're going to notice that underneath my REST project here, I added some basic things I needed for my library. And then we now have a customer controller. And all the logic's already implemented from top to bottom. So now what we'll do is you'll notice that I also have a client that consumes this. And we have in here, and this is the act consumes all the calls. You can see the parts and pieces here. We'll fire it up and we'll run a quick test. So as you can see here, I've already got my update, my delete, and my add are ready to go. And there's all my call logic. So that's a brief intro to what some of the automation capabilities of CodeFactory are. In later videos, we'll walk through a more detailed run of how to do these parts and pieces. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day.